Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Phoenix Rising Summit. Thank you for joining me. My name is Nancy McKay, and I'm the author of Chapter 15, The Gifts of Adversity. So, adversity gave me courage and resilience. We can change how we think about the challenges and the struggles in our life when we're going through the struggles and the challenges. However, we don't necessarily realize that they could be a gift down the road. Most of us think, why me? Why is this happening to me, right? So when I wrote my chapter, I focused on three of my most precious gifts: my upbringing, my recovery, getting sober, quitting drinking, and cancer diagnosis. So, I grew up in a highly functional alcoholic household. And when parents overdrink, which mine did frequently, they're not present. And when you're not present emotionally and physically, it affects everyone, but especially children. And so as I was going through, as I was growing up, that was always the case. I just I felt like they weren't really there. And so, I was told repeatedly that I was too loud and too sensitive and also not the right size. I just, I wasn't the right size. I learned that my opinion and my desires weren't important. And what I understood that to mean was that I wasn't important. Now, I now recognize that my longing to feel needed and valued, loved and validated took a hold because of the trauma that I experienced in my childhood. The standard for what we all deserve as children, as human beings, wasn't demonstrated by my parents or really any other responsible adult in my life. Um, when I was being raised, children were to be seen and not heard. And so that was a very prevalent belief at that point. And so, what I wanted, what I desired, what I dreamed about, or anything like that wasn't of consequence. So as a result, I've struggled with the not enoughness for most of my life, really until recently when I dove headfirst into my thoughts and beliefs. Now, as I mentioned in my chapter, my coping tools were alcohol, running away, and numbing. Those things numb you, right? So that you don't have to feel the sharp edges of your feelings. And what happens then is when you numb, that usually results in self-sabotage, or at least it does for me. So when I numb myself, I don't really care about myself, right? I do things that I really know don't serve me, but I do them because I don't want to feel the way I'm feeling. And that's the way I think that's really where addiction starts, is because we want to numb out. We don't want to feel the feelings that we're having. So, for instance, uh, one of the things that comes up for me, or came up for me, with alcohol is it lowers your inhibitions. It feels good, you feel pretty, you feel funny, you're talking to people, it lowers your inhibitions. And for me, coming from a place of not enoughness, right? Looking for love in all the wrong places, that led into promiscuity. And that was uh, that could have gone south real easy. I was very lucky that it didn't. And then, I was diagnosed in my 20s with depression. And so when you're taking medication for depression, which I have for many years, and you pour alcohol over it, which is a depressant, it negates the medication and it makes the depression so much worse. And so that led to my suicide attempt. So, I had the not enoughness. I was struggling with the addiction and the depression, and it was just a recipe for disaster. Fortunately, the only thing that got shot was an innocent pillow on the bed. So, that's how that story went. And at that point, I was standing at the intersection of desperation and grace. I felt the universe, because at that point my belief in a religious God wasn't there, but I had faith of some kind, and I knew that my work here wasn't done, because I wasn't successful in my attempt. So then, then years later, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and that's a traumatic experience, and the treatment of it was a traumatic experience. So all of this trauma built character, right? And it created some resilience. I learned that I was stronger than I thought I was. I learned that that there must be a purpose for me to be here. I wasn't sure what it was at that point, but I knew that there was a purpose there. And so, as I dove into doing some work on me, I dove into the personal development pool head first. You really have to be vulnerable about doing that. Any kind of work, personal development work, requires vulnerability. And I should say it requires courage, and vulnerability is the way you get there, right? So Brene Brown, if you follow her at all, she says vulnerability is our greatest measure of courage. And so you can't have courage unless you've been vulnerable. So asking for help is a sign of courage. You have to be vulnerable to ask for help. You have to acknowledge that you need help in order to ask for it. And that's vulnerable. And so, the day after I tried to commit suicide, I called my neighbor, who I knew was in recovery, and asked her for help. And I asked my chemo nurse to help me get through my first round of chemo. And it's just all these all these times of vulnerability lead to more courage. It builds your courage. And so, my hope is that, going through these traumatic events, you know, they changed my perspective on life. And I hope that if you've gone through some trauma, that you can look at the silver lining in that and look at the gift that it has given you. My mantra became, I didn't get sober and survive cancer to be miserable. And I was so determined not to live my life the way I had been. Now, I was sober and I was already in therapy, but I wanted to find my purpose. I wanted to feed my soul. And so, I started working with a life coach. And I really went back into the personal development pool, and I started learning a lot more about myself. And then I started training to become a life coach at the age of 61, when most people are thinking about retirement. And mindset played a big part of that. I wasn't studying mindset so much then, but I knew that even though I was 61, that it was up to me to change my life if I wanted to do something different. And so, I felt like age was not a boundary for me. I didn't care that I was 61. So now I want to talk about mindset a little bit more. So our circumstances don't create our experience in life. It's our thoughts about the experience, our thoughts about the circumstance that create our experience, right? So, there's an old saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And I know that to be true. So there's a thing called clean pain and dirty pain. Clean pain is when you are hammering a nail in a board and you hit your thumb with the hammer. Damn, that hurts, right? That's clean pain. Now, if you start telling yourself that you're a clumsy idiot, how could you do something so stupid, and ruminate on that for hours or days or however long, that's dirty pain. The pain in your thumb has gone away, but your mind is still churning up those negative, nasty, you're stupid, you're clumsy thoughts, right? That's dirty pain. So one of the tools that I use with my clients, is called the model. And what it does is it really sets out very clearly and simply how our thoughts are created by our circumstance. So we have a circumstance, we have a thought about that. And then our feelings are generated from that thought. And then our actions are driven by the feeling, the emotion that we're having, and then we have a result as a result of the action that we took. So, for instance, I had a cancer diagnosis. Now, I could have said, I could have thought, why me? Right? And when I think, why me? Why is this happening to me? that means that I'm not, you know, accepting things as they are. And that's where our suffering comes in, is when we are thinking that things should be different than they actually are. So if that why me makes me angry, then, you know, how am I going to act? How am I going to treat people, treat myself? You know, it's going to be a big fucking mess, right? So then, what results do you get? Well, you still have cancer. That's a done deal. That's a fact. But now you're angry and you're mad at everybody and you're acting like a miserable idiot. And that's no fun, right? We can all agree that that's suffering right there. You are suffering. But we can turn that around, right? You still have a cancer diagnosis. But in my case, I said, you know, I really thought, why not me? The thought, why me, never really entered my mind. It was, why not me? You know, the odds were that, you know, odds were really good that I would get cancer. And so I accepted. My feeling was one of acceptance. It was like, okay, now I know what I've got. Now I can deal with it, right? And so you set about taking care of it. You go get chemo. You start taking care of yourself differently. You, although I did eat ice cream, but, you know, that's not, you know, that's neither here nor there. So, but what we do is we treat ourselves with compassion, right? And we understand that we might not be able to change that circumstance, but we can change how we think about it. And it changes everything. So then, if I've accepted it and I'm treating myself with compassion and I'm taking action, then the result is I'm not miserable. You know, I'm the only suffering that I'm going through is because of clean pain. It's not because of dirty pain. Okay? So there's a big difference, and that's just the, you know, the tip of the iceberg as far as mindset work goes. It's you know, it's just one little tool that I use, and that's just a brief snippet of it. So, you know, we're all a work in progress. And even, you know, even the most enlightened coaches are still doing thought work and mindset work and working on themselves every day. And I am not in that realm. but I am working on that, and I am working on my mindset daily, and I know that there's not a finish line. You know, the only finish line there is the one that we'll cross when we're 10 toes up. So we're always a work in progress, and it's progress, not perfection. There is no such thing as perfection. And I just, you know, I just try to make every day a little bit better than the day before. So what, you know, I know now, today, I know that I deserve everything that my heart desires. I know that I am worth this work. And you are too. So, you know, I hope that this has, you know, inspired you to look at the challenges and the struggles that you've had in your life and see if you can change your thoughts about them and find the gifts in that adversity instead of suffering with it. because if I hadn't gotten cancer, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. And this is so much fun. I'm just having a great time. So my life is better because of all the shit I've gone through. And yours can be too. And if you need some help with that, you can find me at amazingoutlookcoaching.com. So thanks a lot. If you have any questions or comments, drop them in and I will look at those right now. And I want to thank everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. So let me take a look at the comments. If you have any questions, type them in and I'll see if I can answer them. So let's see what we got here. Hello, hello, hello. It doesn't look like we have any questions. Oh, thank you, Beatrice. I'm glad that that's what you needed to hear today. So I believe I'm a little on the short side here, but so I can hang out for a few minutes and then we'll sign off. So, but I'm really glad that those of you who joined me did, and I think I'll just sign off now. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a lovely day, evening. I know we've got people from all over the world down in Australia and New Zealand and all around. And you're very welcome, Christine. I'm glad you're here. And thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.